Hello everyone and welcome back into another video. Today we're once again back in Warframe for another build, and this time we're having a look at Dante. He is a very majestical Warframe, probably the best Warframe we have right now, because yeah, he's pretty good at surviving and he's also very good at dealing damage. He is also able to protect the whole team and also allows them to deal more damage, which is pretty good. Anyways, that's enough introductions for now, so let's jump into the build. Let's start from Dante's abilities. His passive allows Dante's Noctua, which is his exalted weapon, to scan enemies when you kill them with this weapon, and after fully scanning an enemy you get 50% more status chance against that specific enemy, and this applies to all the enemies in game, which is pretty cool. Let's now talk about the Noctua, which is also his first ability. Activating this ability costs 6.25 energy and summons Noctua, and this weapon is gonna work like any other tome in the game, although there's only one more I guess. The only difference is that it does not consume ammos, it consumes energy per shot, so every time you shoot the weapon it consumes 2.5 energy. The bullets will shatter into 4 fragments after hitting an enemy, which means shooting Noctua inside a group of enemies will hit pretty much all of them, especially if you have some punch through, and that allows you to charge the tome's meter a lot faster. By pressing the alt fire button, you shoot a bigger projectile that goes through enemies, and it will also apply all the special effects you have equipped on the weapon. Dante's second ability is called Lightverse, and by casting this ability, all allies in range, including yourself, gain additional health and overguard up to a certain cap. Then we have his third ability called Darkverse, and by casting this ability you'll deal slash damage to all enemies in front of you in a certain cone, and this also applies slash procs. And finally we have Dante's most unique ability, which is called Final Verse. This ability becomes available after casting any combination of Lightverse and Darkverse, and depending on the casting order of these two abilities, your Final Verse will deal different things. By casting 2 Light Verses, your Final Verse will give you and all allies in range a lot of overguard that will also regenerate per second. If you cast 2 Dark Verses, you gain access to Tragedy. And by casting this version of Final Verse, all the slash, hit and toxin status effects on enemies will just detonate into a single blast, dealing a massive amount of damage that also gets amplified by a certain damage multiplier. By casting a Light Verse and then a Dark Verse, you gain access to the Word Warden, and casting this version of Final Verse will summon Noctua's copies for you and all allies in range, and this copy will deal 50% of your Noctua's damage and also applies all the statuses that you have equipped on your Noctua. It will attack every time you or your allies shoot or attack enemies with melees, which is pretty nice. And finally we have Page Flight, and to cast this version of Final Verse you have to cast a Dark Verse and then a Light Verse. After activating Page Flight you will summon 3 Paragrims, which are like little birds that will run around and deal damage to enemies. They deal slash damage, they also apply status damage increase and status vulnerability to all the enemies they hit, which means enemies are more likely to be affected by status effects and they will also take more damage from those status effects. And by combining all these abilities you are able to pretty much become unkillable and deal millions of damage in a very huge AoE. Okay, those were the abilities. Let's now move on to the Archon Shards, and I suggest using at least 2 Tauforge Ember Archon Shards with casting speed. If you don't have Tauforge, use normal ones, they are perfectly fine. Then I'm using 2 Azure Archon Shards with energy maximum, and these are just a personal preference, you can skip this and add something else you prefer. And finally you have a free slot that you can use for whatever you like. And these are the mods I'll be using for today's build. Corrosive Projection to reduce enemies armor by 18%, Power Drift to increase my ability strength, Prime Continuity to increase ability duration, Streamline for ability efficiency, Prime Flow to increase my energy pool, Blind Rage and Transient Fortitude for more ability strength at the cost of ability efficiency and ability duration, Stretch and Overextended for a lot more range at the cost of ability strength, and finally Precision Intensify to increase the ability strength of my 4th ability by 90%, and since our 4th ability is the most important part of our kit, this is just the best mod you can keep here. Moving to the Arcanes, I am using Molt Augmented for up to 60% more ability strength, and Arcane Energize for more energy regeneration, but you can also use Arcane Steadfast for 20% chance that your next 3 abilities will cost no energy, which is just amazing because Dante will spam abilities like crazy and you'll probably activate this arcane a lot. So that's pretty much the build. Let's now move on to the weapons. I'm using the Scourge Prime, which is mostly here for fashion, and that's because it does look nice, and Dante also does this fun animation which is pretty cool. And these are the mods I'm using on this build. It's nothing amazing, this is just a one-forma build for this weapon because I wanted to use it. Moving on, your secondary won't matter that much, so I suggest using something that you can swap to kill like acolytes or something like that, and then go back to your Noctua, which will replace your secondary for pretty much the whole mission. In this case, I'm running the Furies, which is a nice weapon. You can also use the Latum or any other secondary you like. And these are the encounter evolutions I have on this weapon. I also have a full build video for this gun. It does not feature my Raven, so it's a more realistic build as well. And if you're interested, you can find the link on the top right corner. And finally, the melee I have chosen is the Falcor because it's just an amazing weapon. It's also very cheap to acquire, and with this build, it's able to, well, pretty much kill everything you need to kill, which is what we are going to do. Let's now have a look at the Noctua build, which is both of a meme build but also an amazing build as well. It really depends on what you prefer. For me, I just use Noctua to pretty much trigger all the toe mods at once, and those will give me more ability efficiency, more ability duration, more ability strength, and also energy regeneration per second after hitting enemies with the alt fire. I've also built for a lot of multi-shot and a lot of fire rate, that way the alt fire meter will charge a lot faster. Then I'm using Madurai for the usual 50% more casting speed and 40% more ability strength. And you can use any companion you like, but I recommend something that can spread viral a lot, like a Panzer Rupafila. And that's pretty much the whole build. Let's now see it in action. I have here the usual 20 corrupted heavy gunners level 225 with Silpat modifiers, so they are very tanky enemies and we're gonna take care of them today. The first thing you want to do is cast your Noctua, and that will allow you to also cast your alt fire, and that will activate all the toe modes and grant us those amazing buffs. Let's cast our other abilities. So we want to cast 2 light verses, and then our final verse to activate the special version called Triumph, and this, as you can see over here, will grant us additional overguard regeneration on kill and assist, and also grant a massive amount of overguard to us and all our allies, which is amazing. After doing that, you can cast your alt fire and also build the alt fire meter very quickly as well. Recast that. Now we have maxed out our buffs, and all you have to do is cast your alt fire every 20 or so seconds, which is not that hard to do. After having done that, we also want to grab our Madurai buffs, and let me just refresh my tome buffs just because. So we are gonna cast our Triumph again. So 2 light verses into final verse. We now have 24,000 overguard, which is amazing. Let's now cast a light verse, a dark verse, and also our 4 that will summon the Noctua copy on our side. Let's now cast dark verse, light verse, and then our final verse that will summon the page flights. As you can see, they will just attack enemies. Those peregrines, those little birds, they will just kill everything. And yeah, that's very, very nice. Let me just grab my buff again. It's not that hard, you'll do this a lot initially. He has a very active playstyle, which is nice. Let's now cast our Dark Vest 2 times and our 4. And yeah, that pretty much takes care of all the enemies in the AoE. Okay, let's try again, but let's be a little bit faster now. So we're gonna go back to Dante, cast our alt fire a couple times, and there we go. Let's cast Dark Vest 2 times, and our 4, and everything is now dead. And that's pretty much Dante. So basically, keep your Triumph active as much as possible. Also remember to cast your page flights and your book once in a while. It lasts for a very long time. I think it's like up to 90 seconds if you have the tome mode active, which is pretty nice. And yeah, just spam your dark verses, and that will clear the whole map every time you cast it. And yeah, that's pretty much Dante. He is, in my opinion, one of the best Warframes in the game, and you should probably give him a try. I think you might enjoy his playstyle, especially if you like caster Warframes. He is also very tanky thanks to his overguard, and he is able to clear enemies in a very big AoE, which makes him great for pretty much all content in the game. Alright, I will now leave you guys to the showcase where I test this build in a 10-minute survival in Steel Path against greener enemies. I will cut out all the boring parts and leave like maybe most of the fight plus the acolyte fights, which is probably the most important thing. That way you'll be able to see how he performs in a more realistic scenario. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like to support the channel, and if you really like what I do, consider subscribing as well. I wish you a great rest of the day, and bye bye.
It's I feel fun with this.